In this Project Apex tutorial, I'll be showing everyone how to successfully port forward the router for a multiplayer game. To start things off, we'll need to know a couple of things first. The first thing you should know is your internal IP address. You can find your internal IP address by going down to Start and typing in CMD in the search bar. This will open up the command prompt. Simply type in ipconfig. You can find your internal IP address of the computer you're currently on by looking at IPv4 address. This IP is important because this is the IP that will be specifying which computer will accept the connection. Now that we know the internal IP, we can finally dial into your router. You can do this by simply going into your web browser and typing in your default gateway, which you can also find in the command prompt. My default gateway is 192.168.1.1. This is the address I'll be using to type into my web browser. For most routers, there's already a security feature built in where you have to type in either a username or password or just a password. If you haven't set your router password, most of the times it's just either password or admin. In this case, I've already made my own. Once you've successfully logged in, you should see a plethora of different features in your router. The feature we will be looking for is port forwarding. Now you can do single port forward or port range forward. Single port forward is probably best for this, but I like to use port range forward. You should be given a list something similar to this. You can name the application anything. I suggest naming it to something that you will recognize in the future. The port we're forwarding for all FPSC games is 2303 for both protocols, TCP and UDP. The IP address is the internal IP address that we found out using command prompt. Mine is 104, so this is a little bit outdated. Make sure to have enable or anything else that your router has, and save the changes. Once the saves are successful, just click continue, or it should just come back to this page. We aren't done just yet. There's actually one more step, and this has to do with Windows Firewall. Even if your firewall is off, you still have to port forward 2303 in the firewall and accept the inbound and outbound rules. So we can get to the advanced firewall features by going down to Start, going to Control Panel, System and Security, Windows Firewall, and Advanced Settings over at the left. This window should pop up with a bunch of different options, and we'll start off with making our own custom inbound rule by going over to the right and clicking New Rule. We'll start off with the port, we'll click Next. We'll start off with TCP. We'll need to make two, one for TCP and one for UDP. Simply type in 2303. Allow the connection for everything. Name it something that you can remember. So now our new inbound rule is complete. We can click Finish. We're going to do another rule for another port, except this time we're going to select the UDP protocol. It's the same, 2303. Allow the connection on all. Okay. Now our inbound rules are done. Now we have to create custom outbound rules. Same procedure as before for port, TCP, 233. Now this confuses a lot of people. By default, it's already on block connection, and we don't want this. Make sure you click on Allow Connection on everything. Done. Once more, for UDP, allow the connection. And done. So now the fun begins. We can finally run our dedicated server. So you can close out of this, close out of this. To run the dedicated server, go into your Setup INI and make sure Run as Server equals 1 and save. Here will be the name of your server. When the server is completely loaded, you'll be brought to this screen. Players will now be able to join your server. If you're still having problems with players not being able to connect to your game, make sure that you turn off any antivirus software or third-party firewalls. If any additional problems occur, make sure to tell us in the Project Apex thread. Well, that concludes this Project Apex tutorial.